Hey folks, Eshin Lacoste here with another segment from All Wyse Transformation, where we have a conversation about mental health, spiritual practice, and self care. And today I have a really, really good friend with me. I swear his name is not Samsung. His name is Ken. Ken, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, hello. My name is Ken Dean. I live in the Washington, D.C., Maryland area. I've been a Maryland resident since I was 11, and I graduated from Brown University with a Bachelor of Arts in English and American Literature. And in 2014, I was certified as a yoga teacher, having completed 200 hours.
And I worked with Ken years ago where we both facilitated a Gay Men of Color retreat over at Easton Mountain. And I remember taking one of Ken's yoga classes, and I was like, I can't do this. I can't do this. And Ken was just like, not even sweating, not even breathing hard. And here I am going,
Yoga, we think of it as a moving meditation that can be really tough.
oh my gosh. Yeah, I thought I was, and I tend to do gentle yoga, and you were doing gentle yoga, but it had a little bit more oomph to it.
Yes, just a little more.
Yeah, it's just a little more. So can I usually start off, if you haven't hit the like button, please do.
Okay.
And don't forget to subscribe for folks who are joining me for the first time. So, can I usually like to start off with a question about what's getting your curiosity going these days?
Let's see. Well, recently I was talking with someone, a friend, and she said this year, 2025, she wants to be curious. And I said, same thing. I want to be curious. And the thing that is getting my attention the most is um, the way we get information. What are our sources for information?
Mm,
So I'm old enough that the newspapers and the 7 p.m. National news, those were our sources. And nowadays, I'm hearing that people are getting their news from TikTok and um, and from online sources.
mhm,
And that's so amazing to me because it makes me wonder, are there editors? Is there fact checking?
mhm,
And so I'm just curious right now about how do I get information and
mm.
how do others get information?
Right, right, yeah, and I think there's this aspect of um, where it's like tunnel information where like it's like clusters of people who
Yes.
only hear, it's like an echo chamber where people only hear from that group of folks, and it's just information just bouncing off of each other, compared to sort of going to various other resources of information.
Yeah. And I remember years ago that some people were shocked that young people were getting their news from the Daily Show. And I think, wow, we've come so far from that.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Or just regular Joe schmoes, who you like me, who starts their podcast, and they're just putting information out there and not really fact checking or putting any rigorous research around the information that they're gathering.
Yeah, yeah. And I have a friend and friends, and they have three questions about what we say. And they say, is it true? Is it helpful? Does it have to be said?
Ooh,
And right now, is it true is such a big part of everything. Is
yeah,
it true?
yeah, yeah. How'd you get into yoga?
I was in the army a long, long time ago, and I started running because the physical training. We had to do push-ups, sit-ups, and run for 2 miles. And so the first time I ran, I think it may have taken me 30 minutes or something to run 2 miles or something like that. And after a while, I just started running so that I'd be prepared for the Army test. And I got to like it, enjoy it. So I was running all the time. I ran 3 miles every day. And then a coworker said, "Hey, they're offering yoga classes here at work. You should sign up for it. It will help you with your running." And I signed up for it. I believe it was 10 classes for $120. And the teacher, I still remember, her name was Paula. And I signed up and I took yoga classes at work every Monday. And then it's just um, continued from there.
Hmm. Um, do you incorporate your yoga practice into a spiritual practice, or do you feel like yoga and a spiritual practice are separate from each other?
Well, it's the my takeaway from yoga is that it's physical because when I have a regular yoga practice, maybe I won't lose weight, but my body will change. But the other part of yoga and being around yogis, people who practice yoga, and going in and out of your yoga studio is it becomes a spiritual practice because it questions what is my way of being.
Hmm.
So in yoga spaces, am I being kind? Do
Hmm.
I gossip? How am I moving in the world?
Hmm.
And that was the biggest spiritual part about yoga. What is my way of being? So it's yes, it is physical. Yes, there is perspiration. We have a heated studio, but it's really what is my way of being?
Yeah.
And so yeah, that makes it a spiritual practice.
And I would imagine there's a mindfulness component to it, and I sort of know that mindfulness is a very sort of like hot and sort of like it's the kitschy thing now, but there does seem like when I have practice yoga and it really forces my attention to be in the moment. It really asks me to let go of everything, and there's a slight compassionate component uh, to practicing.
Oh, definitely. When I was practicing at work every Monday with the teacher Paula, she would tell us over and over again, breathe, breathe, inhale, exhale. And I found myself in traffic, hanging out with people, and I would just breathe. And then the other thing in yoga is they say, stand up tall, reach for the sun, reach for the ceiling. And I found myself sitting up. And so in times when traffic's backed up for miles, it's breathe. When
Mm,
someone says something insulting, it's breathe. So
mm,
those components really have become a part of my life where I just go, I'm standing in this long grocery line, I'll breathe.
mm,
So it shows up over and over again. Breathe, reach up, sit up tall, stand up tall.
yeah. I know for me as an individual who struggles with anxiety, one of the nice thing I like about what you said is that it requires for me to acknowledge that I am being either critical. It requires me to acknowledge that I'm in a sort of stressful moment. So it's really about like the awareness, right? Again, the mindfulness piece, but there's this sort of awareness, like, yeah, I'm not in a really good space right now, and it doesn't necessarily mean you have to do anything about it. It's just that first step of just realizing that I'm probably in a distressed state of being.
Yes, the yoga being physical helps me to focus my mind and let me know, okay, I'm on my yoga mat, but I'm thinking about breakfast. Oh, but I'm thinking about lunch. Oh, I'm thinking about work. But if I come back to my yoga practice, staying on my mat, that translates to being out in the world. And that's when I can say, as you said, this is the way I'm feeling right now. I'm here standing in this long line. This is the way I'm feeling right now. I'm about to answer a call from someone who makes me nervous. So it really does help focus the mind, and then that acknowledgement that this I'm feeling something right now.
Yeah.
What is my feeling?
Yeah. Um, I know for some people it's a little easier. What do you think is usually the stumbling block or the, and again, obviously I'm simplifying this question, but what do you think sometimes it is makes it difficult for people to get into sort of like a healthy practice like yoga or exercising or running, like what do you, you know, in your experience doing yoga and teaching yoga has been that sort of blockage for people in getting started in their sort of well-being journey?
Well, I grew up at A.P. Shaw United Methodist Church, and Pastor Stevenson used to say to us, "You need to get up from your stool of do nothing." And he's passed away decades ago, but that really stuck with me. And in my early 20s, I didn't exercise. All I did was eat lots of chocolate chip cookies and watch television. But once I got into the army and once I really got up and got active, it was that first step. How do I take the first step to do something? So when I decided to go running, I bought some shoes and I said, I'm just going to run. I'm not aiming for speed. I'm not aiming for form. I just want to run. And it takes acknowledgement and maybe some hard facts with myself, but
Mm-hmm.
so that um, uh, I have to. What is my first step?
Yeah.
So and it takes courage. So will I go to a gym? Will I go to a yoga studio? Will I talk to someone about my mental health challenges?
Mm-hmm.
It it takes courage, and sometimes I don't know the first step, and sometimes I'm nervous and scared. So after the pandemic, after we had the vaccines, after I had my shots, I said, okay, I'm going to go to Planet Fitness. And I signed up a month before I went in. And I said, I'm going to go in here. There are going to be people who are ready for fitness magazine covers, but I'm not those people. I'm not that person. I'm just going to do my own thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, if I start off at 10 pounds, 20 pounds, I'm going to start somewhere and try. And my goal is to get stronger, but I'm not going to compare myself with anyone else. So really, how do I take a first step? Do I
Mm-hmm.
talk to someone? Do I ask others questions? And when I ask others questions, that's vulnerability. Like,
Mm-hmm.
so, oh, I see you go to the gym. Like, how did you do that? Oh,
Yeah.
you go to yoga. Oh, I could never do that. Oh, you ride a bike. And so it really is, for me, it's been, I wasn't satisfied with where I was. And I just started with, I have to do something.
Yeah. Yeah. I know for me, when I first got into to yoga, I think I was in a bookstore somewhere, and there was sort of like a, I think it was like a Arishtangi introduction to yoga, and I just remember just like, oh, I think I'm gonna buy the book, and mind you, it probably took like another 6 months after I got that book before I actually like start implementing. But I just remembered thinking like when I initially started, oh yes, I'm gonna start yoga, and you know, obviously again 6 months, but it was that the first time that I did it, I was by myself. I was in my apartment at the time. I think I even looked up some YouTube videos on Ashtangi yoga poses, and I just started. Just, you know, I didn't even have a mat. I didn't even have a yoga mat at the time. I think I probably like used a towel or something like that. But it was just like you said, just taking that first initial step that it doesn't have to be, and then I think I want to say maybe it was probably maybe another 2 months, a month or so before I actually got into a yoga studio. And so it was like a really gradual step because like the process of change, whatever it is, it's heavy lifting.
Yes, yes, yes. And it really is when I decide I want to change, do better, I want to stop. I have to make that decision and then really, again, have to say, I'm going to do something.
Yeah.
I have a friend, we've known each other for decades, and I say, come to the yoga studio, come and take a class. It will be free. And he always goes back to, oh, I'll be embarrassed. Oh, I don't know the moves. And I showed him, and he still won't do it. Now, he complains about the weight he's gained, and he knows, he says, I know I need to do some exercise, but I never bring it up because he's not doing anything but sitting on his stool of do nothing.
Yeah.
And when I really decide I'm going to do something, and maybe it starts with a YouTube video, and then I go, oh, okay, maybe it's like, maybe it's driving to the gym every day for 3 weeks. And then on the fourth week, I actually go inside. But now I know I can get up and I can go there. And so, yeah, it's like do something.
Yeah, I like that example about like, because I know working with people in recovery, when they're sort of nervous about taking that first step to going to like an AA meeting or an NA meeting, sometimes I'd be like, I know it's a really hard step, and maybe just driving to the parking lot and just sitting in the parking lot, right? You don't have to go in, just get out of the house, get in your car, and maybe that's just the first step, just getting out of the house with the intention of going and just sitting in your car, and then maybe the next time you sit in the parking lot, and maybe next time you sort of walk up to the door and you sort of go in for a little bit and you leave, right? And so it is sort of like this habit forming, right? You have to sort of get in the habit of getting into your routine of your daily life.
Yes, yes. Adding and modifying and changing my routine. If I stay up until 11 p.m. every night, is there room for exercise? Is there room for meditation? Is there room for more water in my life? Well,
Mm.
if I'm staying up until 11 p.m., surely sometime during the day, I can take that first step, whatever it is.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. What does self care mean to you, and how does it relate to your spiritual practice, if you have a spiritual practice?
I'll tackle the second part. I do have a spiritual practice, and um, a long time ago, I mentioned it before, I joined AP Shaw United Methodist Church, and I became a Christian. And um, that brand of faith, that style of faith, is what I practice even today. But it was adding in the yoga that had me questioning what is my way of being. And that's when my religious faith practice became more of a spiritual practice, asking, how do I move in the world?
Mm.
Okay. Sean, what was the first part of your question?
The first part of the question was, how do my spiritual belief influence? Oh, sorry. Did I just lose that question? Hold on. Oh, yeah, here it goes. What does self care? What? Yeah. What does? Yeah. What does self care mean to you?
Okay. Okay.
Sorry about
Well,
that.
oh, it's okay. Well, Mariah Carey has these song lyrics, and I believe it's um, I forget which song, but the lyrics are, "I've got to do what's best for me." And when I heard that song and heard her sing that, I thought, "Oh, definitely, I have to do what's best for me." And what's best for me, and also when I went into counseling, the counselor would end every session with "Take care of yourself."
Mm.
So those two things together, I have to do what's best for me and take care of yourself, really opened my mind and expanded my horizons and made me think, what am I doing to take care of myself as I would take care of others, as a parent takes care of a child. So that meant uh, being even more aware of my diet. It meant being even more aware of what I say. And it meant just asking myself, is this helpful?
Yeah.
So every day I drink at least 96 ounces of water. I'm aware of what I'm eating. I'm aware of the people I'm around and our conversations. And the self care really comes into um, I have to move, and maybe move is go to yoga. Maybe move is watch a YouTube video of a church service. Maybe move is just get up and walk the neighborhood or walk the trail. And it's all about, okay, what can I do to save myself since no one's coming to rescue me? No
Mm.
one's going to come and hack off these 20 pounds. I have to do it.
Yeah.
No one's going to help me set aside the cookies and eat the apples. So, what am I doing to save myself? And when I answer that question, yoga, water, sunshine, uh, hanging out with people who are uplifting and encouraging. Also, music.
Mm.
And for me, this modern technology, I mean, I have a smart device in the house, and that has been transformative to just wake up and ask for music to play and music that's going to uplift and encourage.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that those are the parts of self-care for me: exercise, water, food, friends, and music.
Yeah. It's interesting. Maybe about 2 weeks ago, I I pulled a muscle in my back or something in my back, and I couldn't move. And for the first time, I really felt vulnerable, and I always knew that I was human, but it really came home to me like, wow, I'm aging. And my point is that I was realizing like I wasn't necessarily taking care of myself the way that I need to, right? Like I'm not necessarily stretching the way that I should be stretching or stretching on a regular basis. I'm not. I'm sort of really spending a lot of time because I spend a lot of time in front of a desk, in front of a computer, like most people these days. And I've gotten a standing desk to try to stand during like when I'm in the office, and it's sort of like those little things where I'm realizing like I have to really invest more in my body, right? Like I have to invest more in how I'm fueling my body. I really have to invest more in what information I'm sort of taking in, right? And so it's all of those various aspects that I'm realizing that I have to sort of invest more into. Um, and I keep telling myself, "Oh, I'll do it tomorrow," or "I'll do it later." And like earlier today, like I got I'm a pretty early riser, and usually I go to the gym, but lately I haven't been getting that motivation to go, and all I did was just like lay around and read and like watch old episodes of like D Space Nine, and I'm like, what is going on here? Why am I being so whatever's going on?
Yeah, and I think of online church service and yoga the same way. After I do it, I'll feel better.
Yeah,
And so uh, the way I go to the gym is I say it's it's the same as church. After I go, I'll feel better.
yeah,
And but it's that first step, putting my feet on the floor, getting moving.
yeah, yeah. And it's that moving piece, just getting moving. Again, it's easier said than done, but it's that first step of the awareness, right? Like being just being aware.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you cope with feelings of uncertainty or fear?
Let's see. Well, I believe in, I always use affirmations and I use them with others, but my affirmations, I write them down, I email them to myself, I text them to out and stuff. And so words matter.
Mm,
So whenever fear comes up, I like to replace fear with faith.
mm,
So if I'm going to say something like, such as, I'm afraid or I'm fearful going into Planet Fitness, then I say to myself, nope, nope, let's put a lot of faith into going into Planet Fitness. And I change the words around to tackle fear when it comes up.
mm.
So that sometimes I really do say to myself, this won't kill me,
Yeah,
whatever it is.
yeah,
And so since this is not going to resort, res, this won't end in my death, let me tackle this.
yeah,
So that means riding a bike. That means going to yoga. That means going to Planet Fitness. That means saying hello. It's not going to kill me. Let's give it a try.
yeah,
And sometimes my fear is, oh, I don't, I'm afraid of saying hello to these people. I say it's not going to kill me and just say hello and I practice it.
hmm,
Hello, good morning, so
hmm,
that it's easier to tackle.
yeah. And the more I sort of like um, look at the question, right? Like, I think for me, it's sort of like the uncertainty. As a as a Capricorn, I like certainty. I like control. I like organization. And you really have to have faith, um, to a certain degree, and remove this self criticism, because self criticism is sort of like this viewing of the self, of how you think other people are viewing you. And you sort of, I know that I have gotten stuck in that loop where I'm so concerned about how people are going to see me, how people are going to portray me, like how people are going to talk about me, and not necessarily in a favorable light. But it's this hyper vigilance of, I I want to not make mistakes. If I do go to Planet Fitness, I don't want people to think I'm a bumbling idiot, right? So it's that constant like self criticism on the self, um, that sometimes I feel is a form of abuse.
Exactly. And I have to ask myself, um, would I say this to a friend? And if I wouldn't say it to a friend, why am I saying it to myself?
Yeah, yeah,
And the way I deal with uncertainty, my current employment situation, um, is I get I get up and I keep trying.
yeah,
And terrible, rotten situations, I just say, this is not going to kill me.
yeah,
And I've survived unemployment. I've survived this, that, and the other. So this can be survived.
mm-hmm,
And tough times, bad stuff happening, keep going, keep getting up, keep rising up. And in December of 2022, no, in Thanksgiving, December 2022, I had a job I loved that I had been doing for 3 years. And they said, we've lost our funding, we're shutting down December 31st.
mm,
And my one option would have been for me to lie on the floor and cry and scream and kick my feet. And instead, I started emailing friends and saying, look, this is my employment situation. I updated my resume. I got moving. And I just kept applying for jobs and applying for jobs and getting the rejection. And then when I finally got the acceptance, I was so glad that it was a knockback to lose my job, but then all my option is to look for a new job and to keep trying and to realize the uncertainty of being a 59-year-old man looking for a new job. There's age discrimination, there's
Mm,
race discrimination. And so the odds were stacked against me, but I said, I am going to try
yeah,
and keep trying until either I get a new job or I'm dead. So whichever one comes, it's going to be okay.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
And you
so
got a job. And you got a
and
job.
I got a job and I've been working there more than a year.
Nice.
And so the way to deal with uncertainty is to ask, I'm afraid of what? What is the worst that could happen? And then realize, yes, bad things could happen, but good things could happen.
Yeah,
I could find a new job, and that would be great. I could find a better job. I could find a job with a shorter commute, or I could find a job with a longer commute, or we could break up and it will be a year before I meet someone new. But I have to bring down the level of disaster or turning everything into a catastrophe and rise up to the level of this is an opportunity for something new or different.
yeah,
Maybe it won't always be better, but it might be different and okay.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so,
Right. I feel like there's a letting go, right? You know, for me, it's a matter of letting go of the assumption of what I think
yes,
things should be, or the assumption or the expectation, how I should be acting, right? It's that constant should, and if you, for me, right, if I'm able to let go of that should aspect, and be aware that the only thing that I'm certain is that there's going to be change.
yes, yes, yes. And I strive to take should out of my vocabulary and just pull it out and say, no, I'm embracing my reality.
Yeah,
This is what's happening.
yeah,
And instead of saying we should have found the money to keep the organization going, I say I'm embracing my reality that we're shutting down. What's next?
yeah.
So one of the things I do is I ask myself, I ask others, what's the plan?
Mm,
You have a situation. What's the plan?
mm,
And then sometimes I ask, and what's plan B? So if I really have gained 25 pounds, what's the plan? My spouse comes to me and says, we've had a good run.
mm,
I want a divorce. What's the plan?
yeah, yeah.
I've got to ask, what's the plan? And the other thing that you mentioned about being judged by others, this is a church thing, but someone said it a long time ago, and they said, remember, those people don't have a heaven to give you, and they don't have a hell to cast you in. So sometimes I just think, yeah, you're not the first person not to like me. You won't be the last. I've survived, and it's okay.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I remember, I didn't necessarily confronted this person, but I remember the first time hearing or learning about someone not liking me, and I was
Mhm.
like, what do you mean you don't like me? I'm a good person. You know, I come from a good family. I'm smart. And it was sort of like this indignation of like, wow, I'm what do you mean you don't like me? You need to like me. I'm and you know, and they don't, right? They really don't.
Yeah. I was in Huntsville, Alabama for the summer when I was 7 years old. And I was staying with a family. And I stayed there a week or two. And one of the teenagers, he said, when we first met you, we didn't like you, but now we think you're okay. And then my high school teacher, who wrote my letters of recommendation, he told me he was my teacher 10th, 11th, and 12th grades. And sometime 10th or 11th grade, he said, when I first met you, I didn't like you, but now I think you're okay. And he ended up writing the letters of recommendation. So I've come to conclude that, yes, I'm going to rub some people the wrong way and they're not going to like me, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And it's okay. And we, I really want people to get to those places of saying, this situation is okay.
Yeah.
I don't have to change it. I don't have to heal it. I don't have to help it. This is okay.
Right. And it's not mine's to own, right? Like
Yeah.
whatever issue or whatever I'm triggering in somebody else is not mine's to pick up, right? I'm more than willing to have a conversation with you about, either maybe I said something that you bristled at, and we could explore that, but I'm not going to take on whatever is triggering you. I'm not going to take that on.
Yeah. Yeah. And I really want to get to the place where I say, I'm not responsible for your emotions, your feelings, your thoughts. Those are yours.
Yeah.
And so one Christmas break, I was looking for a part time job and I ended up working at Sam Goody's record store and Eddie Bauer. They were in the same mall. And I may have said, please coordinate the schedules. So it was 4 hours at Eddie Bauer, 4 hours at Sam Goody. And I worked in both places from Thanksgiving probably to January 3rd. I worked in both places as I am. The people at Sam Goody said, we love you. We like you. Can you stay after the season? We'd love for you to be permanent part time. And the people at Eddie Bauer said, bye. And they didn't offer me a job after the season was over. And I found out that they did offer jobs to others. So that really taught me some people are going to like me, some people are not going to like me, and just don't be concerned about it.
Yeah.
The hard worker and lovable person I was in Sam Goody was the same person I was in Eddie Bauer.
Yeah.
But the chemistry wasn't the same and it didn't work. So one place offered me a job, the other place didn't. So I need to let go of my concerns about who likes me and who doesn't.
Yeah. 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 Um, how are you setting healthy boundaries with others to protect your mental well-being or spiritual well-being?
Oh, wow. Let's see. People talk about boundaries, and over the years, I strive to use my words. So here in Maryland, we have this place. It's the Writer Center. They do lots of programs, and their tagline is use your words. And that's what I want to do more often. So I use the word no. That's one way I set boundaries. When I'm asked, will you do me this favor? Would you like to go here? Would you like to go to this march? Would you like to go to this protest? Would you like to join this group? I use my words and say no. And I don't explain it. I don't follow it up. I just say, no, I don't want to do that. And um, when someone insults me, hurts my feelings, I set a boundary by saying, um, I hope that I never say anything to you that's similar to what you just said to me.
Hmm.
And when I find that people are not loving, supportive, encouraging, uplifting something, when someone's not good to be around, just stay away from them.
Hmm.
If I find that someone doesn't tell the truth, I want to be in your space less. If someone is bringing me down, I want to be in your space less. So my boundaries are to use my words, to be fiercely honest, always speaking the truth in love, and really striving to have a peaceful existence.
Hmm.
So some things I'm just not going to participate in.
Yeah.
So sometimes for me, I set boundaries by starting with the word no,
Yeah.
with no
Yeah.
explanation.
I know some people, for me in the beginning of sort of practicing mental health and practicing self care, and even really delving a little bit more into my spiritual practice. Before all of that, I really felt when I heard the word boundary, I felt like, oh, that's so selfish. Why being, like, it's not always about. I'm like, yeah, no, it is about me. It's about my well being. It's about how I am setting an expectation for myself, right? It's my morals, my values. I don't want those to be trampled upon, and so I need to set boundaries because to a certain degree, right? Like people will take advantage of you, and not saying that it's from a malicious way, right? Like even like a 10-year-old or a 5-year-old, right? Like if they want a cookie and mom says no, they're gonna go to dad to try to get that cookie, right? And so that's not necessarily malicious. So um, people are it is okay for people to go after what they want, and sometimes what they're going after may not align with where I'm at. And so I need to sort of set a boundary of like, yeah, do you, but that doesn't align with me in this particular moment or this particular situation. And I think sometimes people feel or hear or interpret when I set a boundary that I'm being selfish, or that I've sometimes interpret in the beginning that someone is being selfish when they set a boundary because I want what I want when I want it and I want it now.
Well, and when we talk about boundaries, I've I've got to wonder when I set a boundary and someone says something in response, I'm always checking out the adjective. And
Mm,
so you're being selfish. You're not being family focused. You're not this, you're not that. When the situation is, let's talk about the situation without name calling or word calling. Or so that you asked me to come to dinner and I said no, I don't want to come, then let's not toss out our adjectives and describing it and stuff. Let's 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 learn to say take yes for an answer and also take no for an answer.
yeah, yeah,
And and also boundaries have to also consider what is kind, what is loving, what is uplifting, what is encouraging. Because sometimes I've heard or read about people saying, this is my boundary. And what they're actually doing is they're just being mean.
mm,
So if if you don't want my husband to come to the event and you say, I'm setting boundaries, I say, perhaps you're misusing the word boundary.
yeah,
Yeah. So I've got to be aware that sometimes I'm using words, but I'm not being kind.
yeah, yeah. And I think within that, right, there is a certain, depending on the situation, depending on the individuals involved, um, and depending on the nuances of those folks in the situation, sometimes there is a discrepancy in authority, a discrepancy in power, because one person may have more authority. And I guess the one example that's really coming up to mind is, if someone who's in an abusive relationship, they
Yes.
don't they can't necessarily set boundaries in a healthy way because it might put them at risk for more physical harm. And so sometimes I think that work of boundaries, right? Like you said, some people use that as a weapon, And some people are are not are not sensitive or for the general folks when we're using the word boundary, I don't think we're aware that some people just don't have the luxury to say no. They just
Yes.
don't have the resources to be able to walk away, right? I think there is a very sort of fine line about like who and what situation are you using the boundaries. And again, I'm not saying for you not to use boundaries, because sometimes you could do internal boundary work, right, in the sense of I'm not going to start this conversation, or I'm going to leave this conversation in a way where I sort of feel safe, right? And so sometimes boundary work requires a level of nuance and internal and sort of internal negotiation.
Yes, yes, yes. And with when I think of boundaries, I think of what am I doing to save myself? What am I doing to take care of myself? What am I doing to love myself? Eh, And those are the things that should really start the conversation about boundaries. It's is this helping me? Is this hurting me? Is this moving me forward? And those are the things, some of the things to consider.
Yeah, yeah. And again, I think if you have the ability and you have the resources to set healthy boundaries, yes, do it.
Yeah.
Um, but I think, you know, there are some people who just are not in a position to set hard line boundaries, and for
Mhm.
them to sort of find a way to negotiate that aspect. Um, and I like your example about yeah, I'm not going to invite your husband to the barbecue. It's like that's then yeah, what's that about?
Exactly. If I'm like, okay, you're talking about boundaries and I'm talking about just being mean.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and a long time ago, when I moved away from home and was paying all of my bills, that allowed me to set up a boundary. If I'm someplace and someone hurts my feelings, insults me, I leave. And that's a boundary.
yeah.
Oh, you just made fun of me? Good night, everyone. Bye bye.
Right, right.
Don't say, oh, don't make a scene. Oh, no, no. I'm not saying I'm just going to leave.
Yeah,
And that's freedom.
yeah,
But that's also an economic privilege. That, I mean, when I'm taking money from you and you're keeping a roof over my head and you're keeping me fed, then I don't have those options for boundaries.
yeah.
But when I'm independent, I have more options for boundaries.
Right. Yeah.
And I can say, good night. And you can't say, I'm not going to pay your cell phone bill if you leave.
Right. 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 Yeah, it's a fine dance, and I think we're at least I feel like we're both in agreement that the difference between setting boundaries and being mean are very separate, very separate.
Yes, 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 they are.
Um, for you, what is your personal definition of healing?
Of healing,
Yeah.
my definition of healing is when I am no longer triggered by whatever happens. That's when I am healed. When someone says something racist and I don't feel the need to respond, I'm healed of trying to fight that battle. When someone insults me, talks about my weight, and I don't feel the need to respond, I don't need to the need to fight back. I don't need feel the need to be clever and come up with something and insult them back and hurl something back. When something happens and I don't have to respond and I don't feel that I have to respond, then that's when I'm healed. So Sometimes someone will say something crazy to me, and I respond, "Thank you for sharing."
Mm, yeah.
And I don't need to follow up. I don't need to follow through. I just keep going. So when I'm not triggered and screaming and hollering and carrying on in response, that's when I'm healed.
Yeah. Yeah, I struggle with that question. um I sometimes I feel like healing is a physical thing, and
Mm.
sometimes healing, and maybe it's all of it, a spiritual thing, a mental well-being kind of thing. Um, I sort of feel like, and I think I'm sort of saying sort of the same thing you're saying. It's having a sense of peace, um, having a sense of joy, right? Because healing comes in various forms, right? Like I could be healed from my childhood trauma, but it doesn't necessarily mean the relationship that I'm in now, how it ended wasn't traumatic, and so I'm still tackling that. It doesn't necessarily mean having an altercation either with a client or a disagreement with another coworker, and having that tension still there. Sometimes that weighs heavy on me because I struggle with letting things go, and I don't necessarily know if our brains do let things go. I think we dial down the intensity
Yeah.
of that particular situation. But I do feel healing is time and distance from that particular event. For me, at least. Yeah. Yeah.
For, and for me, healing is when I respond differently. So, and when I make different choices,
Mm,
and I'm hoping better choices.
yeah.
And recently, I signed up for something, and then I stood up and I thought, I don't need to do that. I don't need to go there. And all of a sudden, I thought, I'm making a different choice for myself. I'm on the road to being healed.
Yeah.
And so when I make different choices, better choices, that's part of being healed.
Yeah. 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 Well, Kim, we're gonna wind down. I really appreciate you taking the time to sort of talk about mental health and spiritual practice and self care. And so I usually end off with asking folks, specifically in yoga, how would you advise somebody getting started? And I think we sort of talk a little bit about this, but if someone was interested in becoming a yoga instructor or yoga teacher, like what, how would you advise or mentor that particular individual in getting started in that field?
Okay. Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity to repeat what I've said a lot. One, um, find is there a yoga studio near you? Do they have an online component? And if there's a yoga studio near you, do they have a new students something? For some yoga studios, they have a new student discount. The first week, this first month, the first something is discounted or free or something. So, what I've done recently is I went to two different yoga studios, and one studio had new student discount, 2 weeks for $90. Another studio had something for a month, and I signed up for those. And it's uh, those that's one option. Another option is there a yoga studio near me? Okay, just sign up for a class or walk in and say, this is my first time. So vulnerability helps. And say, this is my first time. I've never practiced yoga. I'm not sure I want to do it. May I pay for class afterwards? That way, if I don't like it, I pay and never come back. But if I like it, then instead of paying $30 for a class, maybe I'll get 2 weeks for $50. And the other big part is stay on your yoga mat. Don't think about the people around you. Don't think about the bodies around you. Listen and move. And yoga is a practice, not a perfection. So
Mm,
whether you're doing it for a month, a day, 10 years, it's where I keep going to yoga practice and I'm practicing. And maybe all of a sudden I'll go, oh, wow, I got my foot around my calf. But maybe that's something that takes 8 months or 8 years.
yeah.
And there are all sorts of yoga studios available. Just go in and start off with this is my first time. I've never done it before, and I want to give it a try. Do you have a new student discount? May I pay when class is over?
Nice. Nice.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for gracing me with your time. And it's a pleasure, as always, to have this beautiful conversation and just connect.
Yeah.
All right, folks, we're going to get going, but thank you so much for joining us for another segment of All Wyse Transformation. And if you haven't already, hit that like button and subscribe. And see you on the other side.
Thank you.